$400, that is what Travis Kowalski paid for a surplus Quonset hut in a gravel lot outside Newark, Ohio, in early 2024. Surface rust along the base flanges. Warped door frame. No commercial buyer willing to bid. The average rent for a one-bedroom in Licking County that spring was $1,050 a month. Travis earned $13.40 an hour at a cold storage warehouse and brought home roughly $1,840 after taxes. Rent alone would have taken more than half of that. The math does not work. It has never worked. Over 14 weeks, working evenings on borrowed pasture outside Newark, he converted that rusted steel arch into a fully insulated home with a working kitchen, hot water, and a front door that locked from the inside. Total cost, $487. But how he did it, and what the county sent to his mailbox 6 weeks after he moved in, is the part worth staying for. In 2024, the median asking rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the United States crossed $1,400 a month for the first time. That number had been climbing for a decade, and in rural counties across Ohio, Indiana, and Appalachia, it had outpaced wages for most of that time. According to HUD data, approximately 12 million American households spent more than half their income on housing in 2024. Severely cost-burdened is a technical term. In practice, it means there is nothing left after the rent check clears. In counties like Licking, Knox, and Muskingum in central Ohio, warehouse and manufacturing wages hover between $13 and $15 an hour. A worker bringing home $1,840 a month and facing a $1,050 rent check does not have a budget. He has a countdown. And for workers caught in that gap, the wait time for government housing assistance in most Ohio counties runs between 2 and 5 years. A wait list does not fix a lease that expired last Thursday. What most people do not realize is that there is a parallel supply chain that has existed quietly since the end of World War II. The United States military produced more than 170,000 Quonset huts between 1941 and 1945, prefabricated corrugated steel arches designed to ship flat and assemble fast on Pacific Islands. After the war, they spread across the country to farms, ranches, and industrial lots. Today, they cycle through government surplus auctions on platforms like GovPlanet and PublicSurplus.com. A clean 16-foot unit sells for $2,000 to $5,000. One with surface rust or a warped door frame sells for far less, because commercial buyers will not accept cosmetic damage on a structure that's small. The dents are surface level. The steel arches are structurally sound. Most buyers simply do not think to look. Most of those units get scrapped. A growing number do not. Travis Kowalski was 34 years old, 3 years into a maintenance job at a cold storage warehouse on the eastern edge of Newark, earning $13.40 an hour. Steady hours, predictable shifts, and in January 2024, a landlord who raised his rent by $175 with 60 days' notice. The new total was $1,050. His take-home after taxes was $1,840. That left $790 for food, fuel, truck insurance, and everything else a person needs to stay functional. He ran the numbers twice. They did not change. He started searching surplus auction platforms the following week. GovPlanet and PublicSurplus.com are the two primary sites where military and government property cycles out of service and into public sale. Quonset huts appear on both, listed by size, condition, and location. Most buyers are contractors looking for commercial storage. They want clean units with intact frames and no visible rust. That preference is exactly why the damaged ones go unsold and prices collapse. Travis found a listing on a Thursday night. A 16-foot Quonset at a surplus yard outside Newark. 2 dented arch panels. Surface rust along the base flanges. Warped door frame. Listed at $400 because no contractor would bid on cosmetic damage that size. The corrugated arches were structurally solid and the bolt holes still aligned. He paid cash Friday morning. A co-worker on a flatbed trailer he used on weekends. Travis paid him $25 in fuel. The hut arrived on a back field by evening, lowered onto red Ohio clay, and sat there looking exactly like what it was, a steel arch in a field. The land came from conversation he almost did not have. He spent the following Saturday driving county roads, knocking on doors. The fifth belonged to a retired farmer in his late 70s who owned 4 and used acres that brush had slowly reclaimed over a decade. Travis offered to maintain the fence lines, clear the road frontage, and check on the property during winter. The farmer said yes. No lease, no contract. A handshake between two men who each had something the other needed. What Travis built on those 4 acres over the following 14 weeks, one borrowed tool at a time, is a part most people do not expect. The first problem was heat. A 16-foot steel arch in central Ohio is a heat trap in July and a cold sink in January. Without insulation, the interior becomes uninhabitable by noon in summer and freezing before dawn in winter. Travis had a storage shed. Getting from storage shed to home meant solving the insulation problem first, and solving it in the right order. He attacked it from the outside first, a step most people attempting this conversion skip entirely. 2 rolls of foil-faced radiant barrier material from a home improvement store in Newark cost $42. Wrapped across the exterior arch and secured with wire ties and construction adhesive, that single reflective layer dropped peak interior temperatures by 18 degrees overnight. Interior insulation required a different approach. Travis visited 4 insulation contractors in Licking County and asked if he could take their discarded partial spray foam cans from residential jobs. 3 said yes. A single residential attic job generates 3 to 5 partially used cans that contractors discard because they cannot resell open product. Over 3 weeks, he collected enough to foam the interior ceiling and upper walls. For the lower walls, rigid foam board offcuts pulled from a commercial construction dumpster on the south side of Newark, free, glued to the interior steel curve with construction adhesive, then covered with reclaimed pallet wood planking. Before any insulation went up, he stapled a 50-foot roll of 6 mil plastic sheeting to the interior framing. Cost at the hardware store, $18. That vapor barrier prevents the condensation that destroys most amateur metal builds within the first year. Kitchen. A 2-burner propane camp stove on a plywood counter built from lumber off a demolition site on Route 62. Farmhouse sink from the Habitat for Humanity Restore in Heath, Ohio, $22. Shower. PVC pipe frame, broken ceramic tile fitted mosaic style across the floor, a propane on-demand water heater from an estate sale in Granville for $45. Hot water arrived on day 94. Electrical. 3 damaged solar panels given free by a Columbus installation company. Panels with cracked glass faces pulled from residential rooftops because panel disposal costs money. 2 used car batteries from a salvage yard at $15 each. A $35 charge, controller shipped to the Newark post office. Wiring sequence learned from YouTube tutorials watched at the Newark Public Library. Diagrams drawn on notebook paper and carried to the build site in a jacket pocket. Every dollar in a spiral notebook. Total, $487. The build was finished. What the county sent next is the part nobody warned him about. 6 weeks after Travis moved in, a notice appeared in the mailbox at the end of the farm lane. Licking County zoning had flagged the structure as a potential code violation. The notice asked whether the arch required a building permit and requested documentation of its intended residential use. Travis had a folder ready. Before buying the hut, he had spent 2 evenings at the Newark Public Library researching Ohio's rural structure exemption. Under Ohio's building code, structures under 200 square feet not connected to municipal water or sewer are exempt from residential building permits in unincorporated rural areas. His 16-foot Quonset had a floor footprint of approximately 192 square feet. That number was not accidental. He had chosen the 16-foot model specifically because it came in below the threshold. He responded in writing, cited the exemption, attached the relevant code language, and sent it to the county. The notice was dropped 3 weeks later. Not a violation. A citation against a structure that existing codes had never been written to address. But that notice exposed a pattern that runs through nearly every American county where someone has tried to do what Travis did. Zoning codes written in the 1970s and 1980s never imagined a corrugated steel arch as a legal residence. In many Ohio counties, a man can assemble a Quonset hut in a weekend. The permit process to occupy it legally as a home takes 14 to 18 months. Counties that should be recognizing that a private citizen solve his own housing problem at zero public cost and zero government involvement are instead sending notices that treat the solution as a violation. The same dynamic plays out in Oklahoma, Tennessee, Alabama, and rural Missouri, anywhere someone places a structure that predates the regulatory imagination of the officials reviewing it. The people who receive those notices are usually the ones least equipped to fight them. Travis was prepared because he had done the research before he spent $1. That research, 2 evenings at a public library, no cost, is the single most preventable gap between a $400 hut and a legally occupied home. Travis was not the only one watching those surplus listings. About 800 miles west, the same decision was being made in a church parking lot in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Marcus Webb was 41, sleeping in a 2008 Ford F-150 off 41st Street in Tulsa for 4 months when he found a 20-foot Quonset listed on GovPlanet at a surplus yard in Muskogee. Price, $350. Reason, warped door frame. The corrugated arches were solid. The bowl holes aligned. No contractor had bid. Marcus had been laid off from a pipe insulation crew in 2023 when a petrochemical plant project was canceled mid-build. Weekly take-home before the layoff, $820. After it, $0. A man from the church whose parking lot Marcus had been using drove a construction company flatbed on weekdays. He hauled the hut from Muskogee on a Saturday for $30 in gas. Marcus brought him a home-cooked meal when the bill was finished. The land arrangement followed the same pattern Travis had used in Ohio. An elderly woman owned 3 overgrown acres along a county road east of Tulsa. Her son lived in Kansas City and came down twice a year. Marcus offered to clear the brush and maintain the fence line in exchange for placement rights on the back acre. She agreed. No contract. A handshake. Oklahoma presented a different insulation challenge. The threat was not cold. It was heat. An uninsulated 20-foot steel arch in an Oklahoma summer reaches an estimated 140 degrees Fahrenheit inside by noon. Marcus wrapped the exterior with foil-faced radiant barrier, packed the interior with rigid foam board offcuts pulled from Tulsa commercial construction dumpsters, and built a shade structure from salvaged cattle panels and shade cloth along the south and west faces of the arch peak. Interior temperature fell to 89 degrees, with a 12-volt ceiling fan running. 11 weeks. $431. A front door that locked. 2 men, 2 states. 2 huts bought for under $400. The numbers on the other side of that comparison are what make people stop and recalculate everything they assumed about what housing has to cost. Travis spent $487. Marcus spent $431. Average across both builds, $459. Both men were inside insulated, powered, locked structures within 14 weeks of their first surplus auction purchase. Now, consider the other side of that number. According to HUD's Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program data, the average cost to construct 1 unit of government-assisted affordable housing in Ohio between 2022 and 2024 ran between $285,000 and $340,000 per unit. The average time from project approval to first occupancy in Ohio's affordable housing pipeline was 3 to 5 years. In 2023, HUD reported that only 37 affordable homes existed nationally for every 100 extremely low-income renter households, a ratio that had not meaningfully improved in over a decade despite billions in annual federal spending. The federal government spent an average of $312,000 to produce 1 unit of assisted permanent housing in Ohio. Travis spent $487 and was warm, dry, and behind a locked door within 14 weeks. That contrast tells you everything. Neither Travis nor Marcus is claiming to have solved a housing crisis. They are not running nonprofits. They are not lobbying for any policy change. They are making a quieter and more direct point. A person who needs a roof tonight cannot wait 3 years for a committee to approve a blueprint. A $459 steel arch on borrowed pasture will not appear on any government housing dashboard or count in any official production report. But for the men sleeping inside those arches on a January night in Ohio and Oklahoma, that is a secondary concern. What matters is that it works, that it is legal when you do the research, and that it costs less than 1 month of rent in the cities where the need is most acute. While no agency was tracking any of this, the knowledge of how to do it was spreading on its own. At a food pantry distribution line at a Baptist church in Muskogee, Marcus Webb stood next to a man who had just received an eviction notice and did not know where to start. Marcus pulled a gas station receipt from his jacket pocket and drew a rough diagram on the back of it. The GovPlanet listing process, the footprint calculation, the radiant barrier step that most people skip. The man took the receipt when he left. That was how it traveled, not through a program, not through a nonprofit with a brochure. A gas station receipt with a diagram passed between two men in a parking lot. In rural Missouri, a man named Curtis Briggs documented his own $380 Quonset conversion on YouTube in 2023. That video has been watched more than 2 million times. The comment section reads like a construction manual. Men from eastern Montana, western Tennessee, and rural Alabama describing regional variations on the same method in enough detail that someone could follow each step on their own. In Clarksville, Tennessee, a veterans outreach coordinator at a church helped 3 men locate surplus huts and arrange informal land placements in the 18 months after that video appeared. One found him through a Wednesday night church dinner. Another through a comment left under the Missouri video by a stranger he would never meet. In Hinds County, Mississippi, a social worker described encountering 2 separate families living in converted steel arches on private rural land within 6 months of each other. Neither had met. Both had independently arrived at the same insulation sequence, the same footprint calculation, and the same surplus auction pipeline. The knowledge travels the way it always has, person to person, parking lot to parking lot, one receipt at a time. Travis does not know Marcus. Marcus has never been to Ohio. But on a Saturday morning in January, they were both waking up inside the same kind of curved steel arch, insulated against the same kind of cold, with the same kind of door locked from the inside. In Newark, frost covered the corrugated exterior of Travis's hut, the same panels that had been rusting in a surplus yard 6 months earlier. Inside, a 12-volt fan moved warm air from the propane stove along the curved palletwood wall. His dog, a 6-year-old cattle mix named Decker, was asleep near the door. The spiral notebook Travis had used to track every purchase sat on the plywood counter beside the farmhouse sink, its last entry, for $187. He opened it sometimes, not to add anything, just to read it from the beginning. If Travis had signed a new lease the day the rent notice arrived, he would have paid $14,700 over the 14 months since. His total housing costs in that same period, the build, the propane refills, the minor upgrades, came to less than $700. He is saving the rest. A second notebook on the same shelf tracks a running total for a poured concrete slab on the same 4 acres. The farmer told him he could stay as long as he needed. He said it without looking up from the fence post he was leaning against. He did not build a housing solution. He built a roof. And for Travis Kowalski in Newark, Ohio, in the middle of January, that was the only thing that mattered. If this video helped you understand how this works, hit subscribe. I cover practical stories like this every week. Solutions happening in this country when the cameras are not rolling. The video on screen right now documents a completely different off-grid bill with methods just as resourceful. Click it and keep going.